Have you ever watched a child playing with one of those toys with different shapes? The one with a square, a triangle, a circle, different pieces, and the task seems really simple: to match the shape with the right hole. But the child keeps trying to push the square into a round opening. They push and they turn and then they try again. Sometimes they even start hitting it against the toy, convinced it should fit. And then suddenly they discover the right opening and the square slides in effortlessly. Sometimes life can feel a bit like that, like someone or something is trying to push you into a shape that simply isn't yours. In today's episode, we're exploring what happens when you stop forcing the wrong shape and start finding the place where you actually fit. I'm Hanna Zaxmy, your leadership coach, and this podcast is your confidence boost in color. Let's go. Hi, and welcome back. I'm really glad you're here. Last week's episode was a little different. It grew out of a sermon I had the privilege of sharing. And I just want to begin to say thank you. Thank you for the many honest reflections, messages, encouragement, and also the conversations that has followed from that. It's great to be able to continue the conversation, to understand how it can be useful where you are right now. I see those reflections almost like the light passing through many different prisms, reflecting in many different colors. And suddenly something beautiful appears in different parts of people's life. There is a verse in the Message translation of the Bible that I always love. It's in Matthew 5:14, and it says that we are meant to be the light that makes God's colors visible. And I always smile when I read that line, because in a way, that's exactly what this podcast is about. To show different colors, to different aspects, to show leadership in that way. So maybe that's the role I can have here, to be a prism that lets colorful reflections appear. One part of last week's episode seemed to resonate particularly strongly. The reflection around what kind of armor or clothing we actually wear in life. How comfortable it might be, or actually how heavy it feels sometimes. Because at the heart of confidence or courage, it's actually something very simple: being yourself in your own clothes. There is a Swedish author, his name is Thomas Sjödin, who wrote a book with a title I really appreciate. It's translated roughly to "The one who finds their place take no one else's." And I love that formulation, because sometimes there are voices around us that whisper something else. Who do you think you are? But then you stand in your own place. When you wear what truly belongs to you, you're not taking anything away from anyone else. You're simply stepping into what was always yours. And maybe that is also part of leadership, not trying to become someone else, but becoming more clearly yourself, so that your presence becomes something that encourages others to do the same. And if we go back to that prism metaphor, when someone stands in their place, they begin to reflect light in a way that creates beautiful patterns in their surrounding. Something quite funny happened before the sermon. I got the following question. So, if you're going to preach, does that mean that you started dressing in black now? At first, I was a little surprised by the question, but then I realized that it made complete sense from that person's perspective. In their experiences, that's simply what the role looked like. Black clothing, a certain style, a certain expression. And the question actually made me think even more about this idea around armor, because armor exists everywhere. Sometimes it's visible, like clothes, titles, roles, but Often the heavier armor is one we wear on the inside, like expectations, norms, unspoken rules, the quiet pressure to fit into something, to become what others expect us to be. So perhaps the real question is not what armor do I wear, but rather why am I wearing it? What is the purpose of it? What's the purpose behind it? Because the more aligned the purpose is with who you truly are, the more natural the clothing becomes. Not makes you naked, nor not exposed, but more like a layer that naturally warms you, something that truly fits you, something that allows you to move. But sometimes the armor isn't something we put on ourselves. Sometimes it's placed there by others. Expectations like, this is how you should do it. This is what it should look like. This is how you should behave. And when that happens, it can feel a bit like one of those children's toys with different shapes and holes, like a square block or a triangle or circle. And the shape is just sometimes trying to push through the wrong hole. And sometimes that's what working life can feel like. Someone's trying to push you through a shape that simply doesn't match who you are. I don't know how many times I've been in professional situations where I felt exactly like that, where the person in front of me tried to fit me into a shape that wasn't mine. Sometimes it was possible to have a conversation about it, to explore the intention behind it. Maybe it's something I need to learn, but many times that wasn't possible. What I could always do, though, was to reflect afterwards. What is my purpose here? Who am I trying to be? And what actually belongs to me? Because the more times you experience the pressure in the same environment, the more it becomes a signal to pause and ask, is this really the place where my shape fits? Because just like with the children's toys, there are many openings, many places where the match is better, where you don't have to force yourself into something that was never meant for you. So when I stepped up to talk, I was wearing pink, not a trace of black. And for me, that was actually an important reminder. A reminder to simply be who I am, to do it in a way that feels natural to me. In that moment, I wasn't taking someone else's place. I was standing in my own, because when you stand in your own place, you no longer spend energy wondering, do I look right? Am I saying this correct way? Instead, your attention shifts something much more important. What do I want to contribute with? What do I want to give here? And that is much freer place to lead from. So perhaps this is a question worth sitting with today. What armor are you wearing right now? Is it something that helps you to move, or is something that weights you down? And just as importantly, where did it come from? Did you choose it? Or did someone else place it on you? Because confidence, true confidence, often begins in a surprisingly simple place. The moment when you allow yourself to stand in your own colors, not louder, not more polished, just more clearly you. If this episode resonated with you, you might want to listen back on the previous one as well. Together, they explore what it means to lead, not from expectations, but from identity. And if you would like to continue reflection on this kind of leadership, you're warmly welcome to join the membership with the same name as the podcast. Inside the membership, I share practical tools, reflections, and exercises to help you to put these ideas into practice in your everyday leadership. Of course, all the details are in the description of this episode. And I want to send with you to the next time. Be confident, be you and keep leading in colors. And maybe leadership isn't about becoming a different shape, but about discovering where you already fit.